Welcome to episode 58 of the Creative Train podcast. This one is called Us and Them, the Masks We Wear. Over the past few episodes, I've decided to change my tack a wee bit here and not just offer insights into managing your expectations or how to confidently promote yourself. I've decided to turn that lens inward a bit more and talk about what shaped me as an artist and those subtle inspirations that I like to meditate on. To me, creativity in general is not just something I try to set aside time for on a Sunday afternoon. Instead, maintaining a creative outlook and approach to even the most mundane of my day-to-day routines is a priority. So if you've been struggling with mindset or focus, this episode might be just for you. All aboard? As a professional musician and music educator, one of the most common things people like to ask me is, what's your favorite music? Or who's the best guitarist? And I always have to respond that it's totally context-based. If I'm cooking, there's music I often like to listen to, but usually I prefer the quiet. There's something deeply comforting for me in only hearing the sounds that I make and the dog probably snoring on the couch. At the gym, I wear earbuds, but instead of music, it's generally like a brown noise type of thing mixed with other tones that just drown out the crap coming over the house system. And as for musical pursuits, there are as many focusing tools as there are musicians. And as a musician myself, I'm particularly focused on the quality and integrity of the music, the compositions. If it's good, I'll probably like it. Well produced, well thought out. It doesn't need to be fancy. I'm fine with anything from metal to classical to country to various folk musics from around the world. If it's interesting, I'll generally stay tuned. Case in point, just tonight I had a student in my guitar studio, and I was helping him learn a song that was, although contemporary now in 2026, recorded on a cassette recorder in the artist's kitchen. I'm not going to say who it was, but there was really weird things like weird room sounds, weird room echoes, reverberation of the kitchen. His guitar strings were dead, but the integrity of the performance and what I can say must be heartfelt, soul-felt, lyrical style was what really kept me engaged. And this fella that wanted to learn the song, he's like 13 years old. He's not into pop music at all. And I thought it was so amazing to be able to help him come to realize how to play this kind of music. The overly homogenized thing they call pop music now is not interesting to me really at all, as far as I've heard for the most part. I'm not dismissing everyone. But in my job, I have the special pleasure of having almost 50 private students every week, many of whom come in with new ideas of songs they'd like to learn. Some are classics and some are contemporary. But a lot of them, the contemporary ones, I've never heard before. The great thing about this is I get to be exposed to new music almost daily, and it keeps my mind and my ears sharp for figuring out these songs and then figuring out ways to demonstrate them and teach them. There are some rare gems with clever lyrics, and granted, like as I said, I haven't heard everything. But when these songs are crafted to be virtually indistinguishable from one another, my mind just checks out on them after maybe 30 seconds. What I found is really interesting, though, is the chordal and melodic tendencies of jazz finding their way back into certain popular music. I've had several students who want to get into this stuff, and I congratulate them for having an adventurous appetite for music. My mom and dad had a few jazz albums, and I remember listening to them and feeling that there was something special about what I was hearing. At the time, I guess I would have been 7 or 8, no more than really 10 years old. And though my mind couldn't really put into words what I was experiencing, I knew those sounds had found a home in my mind and heart. Now I'm not a jazz player, jazzer, whatever you want to call them, by any means, and I will never pretend to be one. I think of jazz as the final frontier of musicianship, one of those lifelong endeavors and accomplishments. Speaking of the title of The Masks We Wear, I mentioned a group of folks I used to play with back in an episode called Breaking Up the Band. And there's some rich stories I could tell you about my experiences with that outfit. And I will recount this one, though, because it ties in closely to the masks and the recent topic of jazz. One of the members, who always said his first love is jazz, he grew up listening to it and playing it note for note. He loves the improvisational freedom and the complexity of the harmonies and rhythms. And when a musician comes at you with how much they love jazz, I've come to know that that means they don't get it at all. Because what they really want you to think is that they are really smart. Jazz, in a musical context, equals smart. This mask is worn to show the new people who believes they are the smart one in the group, who talks the most about what they know, who talks the most about their elbow rubbings and stuff like that. And this can happen in so many contexts, in sports or those dreadful cooking challenge shows. There is bravado earned, but you have to be able to back it up if you're going to go on and on about your abilities and accomplishments. When that mask starts to fall, or falls altogether, the person behind the mask goes out of their way to try to diminish everyone else's abilities or even their input on any given situation. Case in point, this jazz-loving musician I mentioned earlier from the Breaking Up the Band episode. Sometime before we broke up, we were working on new arrangements of new songs, and there was a particularly challenging song that we were working on, and we ultimately found that we needed to keep the arrangement but change the key for the singer. So we did. He didn't get it, though. Even the drummer understood more about a key change than the so-called frontman. And what I found was absolutely dumbfounding was how this apparently very accomplished jazz musician could not grasp the concept of a key change once he had already learned his part in the original key. Really? That is at the very core of jazz theory, something any high school level musician with proper instruction should be able to do. But instead of accepting our collective help and suggestions on how to accommodate the changes, he proclaimed, "Let's just drop the song. I'm more of a jazz player anyway." Wow. And we all just looked at one another in a state of slightly amused confusion. In musicianship terms, this key change concept would be like asking a chef to change up a little bit of a basic sauce recipe, or perhaps asking a seamstress if they could do some hand stitching for a repair for you. It was really that basic, but he had no idea what we were talking about or what was really expected. He knew at the outset that most musicians are instantly impressed by someone who can play jazz fluently. But when it came to exercise the smallest of those jazz muscles, it became obvious that he was all talk. It is hard for someone who's coming up in their community of like-minded creatives. It's hard for you to set yourself apart. We want to signal to the world that I am an artist. I am full of new passion. I am brimming with the urge to discover. But at what cost do we wear this badge? Do we drop names like we've met certain famous people? Do we go about our works that somehow aren't available for anyone to see or hear? Do we recite our resume as part of normal conversation? Or do we lie a little to gain the favor of new acquaintances? I had an interesting run-in with a great old friend today that I hadn't seen in maybe 3 or 4 years. And he asked, "How's the band doing? I haven't seen any of your stuff on social media lately." And I told him, just to, I'll give you a brief synopsis of the Breaking Up the Band episode. The singer left, and instead of finding a new singer, they reformed the band without telling me and started gigging again with a different singer, but didn't tell me. So I was effectively just removed from the band with no notice. So, yeah. So he asked how the band's doing. I haven't seen any of your stuff on social media. I told him the story, and he said, "Oh, yeah, I've learned to never really trust that guy." And what is especially funny is the fella I was talking to about the band breakup is one of the guys that the jazz lover musician always drops his name that he's played with him, because he's a great player. So what do? Do you work hard, you dream big, and present the most honest and sincere version of yourself without any thought for how others are going to see you. As wide and varied as creatives can be, I think there are two distinct camps that I can easily lump us into. This is another example of the us and them. There are those who have a hard time talking about themselves and their art. And there are those who simply cannot stop talking about themselves and the things they do. If I'm asked, I'll happily talk about my experience, especially with my students. When someone feels comfortable enough in a student-teacher setting, and maybe they want to know me a little bit better, or maybe they have come to trust my guidance and opinions about things, that they will ask me these things about musicianship, teaching, or creativity in general. And I'm personally honored that they want to know my experience. They want to know me. They want to know the guy who's talking to them, showing them how to do new things on their instrument. And that moment, it proves to me that a bond has been forged and the lines of communication are open and working. Honestly, the effort of keeping up these masks of false accomplishments, or whatever you want to call them, okay, call them lies, because they are. But the sheer mental effort of constantly maintaining this facade must be exhausting. And at what cost? I think it becomes your lack of personal mental energy, your lack of truth sense. And these are topics I've touched on before. This personal mental energy, that's part of your vibe factor. And your lack of truth sense ultimately becomes your lack of authenticity. You don't want to do those things. There's so much of that stuff going on now with AI. It's just we're running up a hill right now. In my experience, I've seen the toll it takes in a social context as well, where people have figured out this masking situation and have learned to keep a safe working distance from these folks. Maybe not a physical distance by avoiding talking to them, but they've certainly come to the realization that they never want to work with these folks again, and they don't want their names and reputations associated with these people. And it's not that all friendships are always severed or lost forever, but it's the depth and integrity of those friendships that ultimately suffers the most. While others gleefully wear masks of false glory, there are others with genuine skill and talent who haven't any courage to get out there and maybe do an art show or make a social media page for their work. I sincerely hope that if you are involved with one of these masked up folks, that you can learn to see the signs when the mask comes out. You don't take it personally when they suddenly become a different person when someone else walks into the room. Their mask comes out when it's time to perform, and they will generally become a different person at that point. Yes, there are stage personas for musicians and actors, but in a personal and social context, this is totally uncalled for. Another hope is that maybe if you found yourself wearing one of these masks at times, you've had a moment to think about it now. And you've come to realize that it's not you you're showing to the world. A mask is a mask. And it's not a true representation of you. Drop it. As I say to my dog all the time, drop it. Let it go. You don't need to create a manufactured version of yourself for the world to see. Instead, let your art show who you are. Let your home, your car dashboard, your desk at work, let those become your personal gallery. Let your song be heard for what it is, a piece of your mind, your heart, and your soul. That's all you can really do if you're honest about it. Once that mask comes out, you have to keep it on. And it comes at the cost of a deeper, richer, and more fulfilling creative experience. There's your pep talk. Now go get to work. So I'll be the first to admit that I've exaggerated at times about my experience. But I don't create a mask that I wear in public that I have to be defensive of and remember all of those exaggerations that I said before where I might let the actual truth slip through in conversation. We all know these people. You know the people that are super inspired, and you know the people that are so shy but brilliant but can't get their work out there. My biggest hope for you, if you're listening this far, is that you let the world know you as the artist. Don't create a fake persona that you think people will be drawn to. Let them be drawn to your art